Welcome to the Freddie Kissoon Show. Mike, all I'm saying, next time, bring the evidence. All you do, you come here, corruption.
How come
Just here. Next time you come, bring your stuff. I am not talking about that. I'm talking about you in 2024, December, saying there's corruption. Bring it.
Let me ask you this question. I would like to ask the AG to propose legislation for what we call small claims court. There are lots of poor people, to an example you just gave, that they have issues with others and sometimes with large firms, but the lawyer fee is greater than the fee you're claiming.
It is their
right.
Unlike the right that someone has, all of our rights exist in context.
What is the context of a second medical opinion?
Because you're disrespecting the process.
No.
Jesus, this is common sense, man.
Any situation which you seem to do, you're just dealing with Afro-Guyanese issues. If one, you can't bring and pull the leaders of the African community together, you're failing. And if two, you can't put forward a future, a blueprint, and a plan for African Guyanese, you're failing as well.
Hi there, a pleasant Friday evening to you. Thanks for being with us on this Friday evening. We don't have a call-in program. This is election time, and so we are using all types of angles to bring out to you what is happening in Guyana. 5 years ago, my wife didn't know who was Eddy Layne, and then she would say to me, that guy Eddy Layne is on the TV. The 5 months was in 2020 when you wanted to know what was going on with this 5 months stretch of election disaster. You go to Eddy Layne, and he and his guests would explain step by step what was happening in the March 2020 elections. I hope Eddy doesn't take objections to that. He was a long established journalist before that, but I think he made his name in those 5 months. I remember my wife definitely saying, that's Eddy Layne on TV. So Eddy Layne has since moved on from journalism to being the head of the channel to government and people. If you want to know how many schools have been built the past 5 years, how many hospitals, how many bridges, how many roads, what have you, it comes through an agency called Department of Public Information. The man who sits at the helm of that and decides how the news of the government's accomplishments and achievements are going to be shaped is Eddy Layne, commonly known, like me, as Freddie, but it's Frederick, Eddy Layne, but we call him Eddy. So, thanks once again for being with us. And next to me, of course, is my co-host, Leonard Craig. Let's establish the protocol and welcome the DPI head to the Freddie Kissoon Show, Eddy Layne. Eddy, thanks for taking time off from your busy schedule.
Thank you very much, Freddie.
Let's get right into it. Did I do an injustice by saying you made your name in that 5 months?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. And interestingly, Freddie, and good evening to your viewers. When I travel across the country now, because I work a lot with the president on his outreach activities and so forth, people would come up to me, countless people.
And that's 5 months.
And they say, Eddy, I ain't seen you on the TV anymore. But I can always remember that 5 months. Like you rightly said, I've been in the business for more than 20 years. I've done a lot of interviews, I've done a lot of stories. I interview a number of presidents, ministers, international guests of the government. But people only remember that 5 month period because that was a critical period, of course, in our democracy. or in the preservation of our democracy. And like you rightly said, we were using that opportunity, myself and many other comrades in the party and then in opposition, to really bring to the fore a lot of the facts as to what was happening, because you had a lot of misinformation. You had people celebrating victories even before declaration and so forth. So we had a lot of a huge responsibility to really counter that with the facts, with what was happening. First, after the elections, the attempts to manipulate the numbers, then the recount process, and of course, you know, they have the famous spreadsheet and bedsheet story. All of that we were countering on a daily basis, several times per day, in the evening, informing Guyanese as to what was happening and keep them informed and give them the facts surrounding those elections. And I think that resonated with a lot of Guyanese across this country. I travel across this country ever so often with His Excellency as he, you know, go to the communities to engage with people, and that's the one thing that people always remember. So you might be quite correct by saying that I actually made my name to somewhat, if I can put that in quote and unguardedly say, a household name, because I'm being remembered for the period that not just myself, but many other comrades in the PPP would have struggled to bring information to the public. And it was during the COVID period too, so you know, a lot of people were home wanting to get information. They couldn't move around, they couldn't go out to get information. So we saw ourselves as a vehicle to really present the facts surrounding the elections and to more or less keep the nation informed as to the direction in which the process was going, the factual direction rather, not the propaganda of, and my good friend here can remember he was interviewed. He was on the other side at that time, and he was interviewed during that recount period. So you're right, and I'm happy to be a part of this program to really talk about, you know, what has been happening in our country. But I will give you a chance. I'm on the receiving end on this occasion. I usually ask the questions, but now I'll try my best to answer the questions being asked by you.
The journalist now becomes the news. Leonard.
Let me go straight into asking you this question. You travel a lot extensively around Guyana, and you must have observed the transformation or lack of it. I don't know. I'm not going to put definition in your mouth. It's either transformation or lack of transformation. What are you seeing in the regions when you go? What are you seeing? Many of us do not have a window out of town, right? What do you see when you travel around?
Leonard, let me answer this question this way. You don't need to travel around this country to see the development. We have a very transparent and open process as a government where information is shared on the development that is taking place. So for a moment, let's ignore me traveling around the country. I'll get to that. But any sober-minded Guyanese who opens the newspapers, well, some of the newspapers, who look at the news, who's following, because all the information is now on social media, and not information I'm talking about that is driven by the government. You have every single Guyanese with a smartphone posting information about development in their communities, development in their region. So I don't know if the term lack thereof is really applicable in this process at this point, but I can tell you that any honest Guyanese will tell you that Guyana has been transformed. We're not 100% as yet. We're getting there, but Guyana has been transformed. But to answer your question, you know, when you go into communities across this country, in the hinterland, along the coast, the kind of transformation that you're seeing, it's unbelievable. I am intimately involved in the process of government in terms of traveling across this country, seeing as projects unfold. And sometimes I myself am amazed as to, wow, when did we get here? You know, I can't believe it in 5 years, what we're seeing. And when you contrast what you're seeing now to what happened in the past, and I know we'll get to what happened in the past, but I can tell you, The transformation is unprecedented. It is unprecedented. The kind of services, the kind of infrastructure, the kind of facilities that people are benefiting from. And we don't need to go far. Right outside this compound when you were coming there, you were seeing Homestretch being transformed. As you go up the road, Mandel, and you get to the Heroes Highway, you're seeing transformation, not just the highway itself, but if you look on both sides of the highway. Sometimes I feel I'm somewhere in Miami, I'm seeing all these warehouses along the road there. You look at Diamond, you look at Providence, you look at the East Coast, Good Hope, Success. You look at Region 3, you look at Essequibo, you look at Region 1, you see housing development, you're seeing roads being developed. And you always hear this argument, some people say, oh, we're not going to eat roads. And we know that. The government knows that. So the government is not just building infrastructure. The government is also working to improve the lives and living conditions of people. And if you look at the kind of services, the kind of benefits that people are getting, you're going to see that there's a solid balance between infrastructure development and human development, not just from an educational perspective, but also in terms of income, in terms of living standard, in terms of opportunities. So to make this short, I think sometimes I myself cannot believe the kind of development I'm seeing across Guyana. And a lot of this happened over the last 5 years because when the PPP left office in 2015, we were on a solid development trajectory without oil. But we had 5 years of absolute destruction. We had 5 years
That's your description of it.
of a country that was crumbling. That was crumbling. And crumbling because of what? Because of vindictiveness. So anything that was PPP that was left there, whether or not it was good for Guyana, it was thrown in a corner. Because of lack of experience and mismanagement, because of corruption, and because the government between that period was focusing on friends and family. So there was no focus on the people. There was no focus on maintaining and developing the infrastructure of this country, improving the lives of people. So whatever the PPP left in 2015 was collapsing for that 5 years. But imagine the PPP went back in office in 2020.
In 2020.
In 2020.
Yeah.
And with the leadership of President Ali, Dr. Jagdeo, and the cabinet and the government structure, they were able to do two things. Not just two things in government, but two critical things. One, rebuild what was destroyed. But parallel to that, expand infrastructure, create more opportunities. And we'll talk about some of those opportunities. But in less than 5 years, you saw a complete transformation of Guyana. Bearing in mind the kind of destruction that happened between 2015 and 2020.
A lot of what you have said, when referring to the party, the People's Progressive Party, you keep using the term we. We. Does that mean you are an executive member of the, or does it mean you are a card-bearing member of the?
I am a card-bearing member of the PPP. I'm very proud of that. Look at my shirt.
Okay. So I guess you'll wear the shirt throughout the campaign. Well, not this color of shirt throughout the campaign.
You will see this color of shirt, not during the campaign only. I wear this proudly anytime.
Okay.
Because I am a part of a political party. I'm not in the leadership of the
I
party.
believe Eddie can be a minister.
No.
I know Ali's going to win.
I don't know what you're trying to. I know we're going to win. I know that we will win the elections. But I'm not going to venture into
Minister
that.
Eddy Layne.
I'm not going to venture into that at all. I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing. I'm very happy with what I'm doing because I'm getting the opportunity to work alongside the government to support the people of this country to see transformation of lives in this country. And I'm very happy and very comfortable. I've never been an individual who, whatever I do, I look forward for positions and opportunities for myself. I'm part of a structure, I'm part of a team, and I'm a team player. So I'm not going to go down that road. But you asked the
Which
question.
road? The
You know what
ministerial
you're
road?
talking about.
The ministerial
I'm not
road.
going down your road. But you ask a question whether I am, and I'm not an executive member of the PPP. I'm a card-bearing member of the PPP. I came through the PYO. I was a central committee member of the PYO. And I made that decision as a youngster, growing up in Essequibo. When I look at what, and I know what my parents went through, and I was telling you, Freddie, before we started, that while I was very young, during the Barnum era, I remember my brother, God rest his soul, used to join the line at what we used to call the supply center at Anna Regina to get food supplies. And by the time he gets to the front of the line, he's told that everything is finished, but then 20 people behind him still collect their parcels.
Eddie, you're young.
I
know those days.
I remember a
firsthand.
lot about that. As much as I was small, I was young, but I remember a lot of it. And, you know, in 1992, when Dr. Chetty Jagan won the elections, I was a kid. I was just in Form 1. I was just in Form 1 in school. But I remember vividly, from then, even though at that time, and this is public knowledge, that we were using 94 cents of every dollar to service external debt. Despite those constraints, quickly we started to see a change in our country. Dr. Jagan opened a number of housing schemes, made housing available to people. A number of major roads, the Essequibo Road. I remember that road, it took sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours from Anna Regina to Sadi. And he did that road. And so many other things, despite his constraints. So, as a conscious Guyanese, I don't want to say young, but as a conscious Guyanese, when I made a decision to join the PYO and to be a part of the PPP structure, I made a conscious decision, a decision based on what was unfolding before me. Even in those hard and tough times, I made a conscious decision to support a political party and be a part of a movement that has always had the interest of Guyanese at heart. That is people-oriented, people-centered, working class, pro-people. So, I think I answered your question.
Yeah,
quite
certainly.
So tell us, Eddie, you normally interview people, so we don't normally see people interview you. So let us hear a little bit about your personal life. Where you're from, how were the parents, are you married?
Yes. So I'm from the Essequibo Coast, Anna Regina.
You went to Anna Regina, Multilateral?
I went to Cottonfield Secondary. And I'll tell you something that a lot of people don't know about me, that I've never really spoken about.
You failed all your courses?
I'll tell you just now. So I grew up in Anna Regina. I attended the C.V. Noons Primary. Because of financial constraints in those days, I couldn't go to Abramsville Secondary. I had to settle for what was then the Anna Regina Community High School. Because you had to travel from Anna Regina to Abramsville, and my parents couldn't afford that. So I grew up in Anna Regina. I attended what is now the Cottonfield Secondary.
It's still there?
It's still there. Changed from the community high. I happened to be, I think I was the first batch that graduated when it was transitioning to the Cottonfield Secondary. I moved from Essequibo, but I'm still a Essequiban by heart. Many years ago, and I came to Georgetown, started to work, I started to study. I spent a number of years as a teacher, as a secondary school teacher, both in the public and private school system. And then I came into the media more than 22 years ago. I had my opportunity to work in the media and have been here since. And of course, I've used the opportunity to advance myself. I now hold a master's in human resource management and preparing to maybe do some more studies, but I have to wait after the elections. I want to focus completely on the elections. My mom is still living in the Espresso. My sister is still living there. My father passed away. My other siblings, I had 2 other siblings. They both passed away. I'm married. I'm the father of 4, 3 girls and a boy.
You didn't waste time at your age.
I'm not wasting time.
Large families are happy families.
The because we care grant is high, you know. And it's continuing to climb.
And I heard the VP say that his last press conference is going to be significantly higher
So,
in
Freddie,
the second term.
you should try too.
Try
You might
what?
be able to benefit from.
Try what? I hope,
Two more. Freddie.
I hope they increase the pension badly. I hope they increase that. All my wife and I
But you
live
can
is
benefit
on,
from both.
all my wife and I live is in our pension, so
You can benefit from both.
But Eddie, you said just now, and therefore the journalism in me would catapult me in that direction. You said you're a card-bearing member of the PPP. So we got a lot of time left. So could you put on your political hat and let's talk about 20 parties contesting the election for a country of 800,000, 20 political parties?
Freddie,
Per capita, we got to be very high in the world.
there are 20 political parties out there. I don't necessarily know about 20 political parties contesting the elections.
But 20 met GCOM
So, announcing your candidacy,
and going to GCOM doesn't mean
going to communities
you can
and going to
enjoy
GCOM and so on doesn't mean that you will meet all the requirements to contest the elections. Might not be requirements or conditions set by GCOM, but there are people out there who may very well fail to secure the necessary signatures and backing. And they will fall off. And many of these parties that showed up there, they had their full membership at GCOM, 3 persons.
Yeah.
So you have 20 names are floating around out there of people who are saying that they own, they form political parties. We will get a good gauge on nomination day.
Yeah.
When you're required to submit your list of candidates to GCOM.
Yeah, and I think when the election campaign actually began, when
all of those one-man
the
shows
larger
will
parties start
die a
launching.
natural death.
Yeah, and
Well, they're already dead because you can't have 1 or 2 persons and call yourself
Right.
a political party.
but I
You
usually
know the
refer
WP
to
is
them
actually 3 persons.
I know that.
4.
David
Four.
Hines,
No,
Takuma
don't
Gonse.
discount 1. There's 4 people.
I know Takuma Gonse, Kedaki Amsterdam, and David Hines. Who's the 4th? There isn't a 4th. An Indian man named
yes.
Kanai.
Right.
Who
I don't
lives,
ever think the WP
but
is a political party.
Hines is not even in the country as yet.
I personally don't consider the WPA a political party. I just see it as 4 races who have a platform and they spew the race all the time.
Hines
Because-
doesn't relent.
Because I don't
Hines
know what
doesn't.
they will bring
No,
to the
be
table
attacking
anyway.
Ubashnewa in the mail who says, I'm a committed PNC, I'm not going anywhere. He attacking the man.
Yeah.
I hear you guys calling Hines professor and
Well, that's the
all sorts
position
of
he
things.
holds. That's the position. he holds.
I'm very, very sorry for those kids who we teach.
Well, adults actually.
Well, adults or
Mm.
I'm very sorry for them. Because when you listen to this guy,
No, he's irrational, yeah.
sometimes it's hard to understand and to really,
Well,
rationalize what is being
He's
said by
only
him.
one of them. You know what I heard? Dr. Nigel Westmos, who teaches at a college in New York, in Hamilton College, said the neo-colonials arranged the 2020 elections and to give the PPP power. That man, if he teaches Caribbean politics, is going to tell his students that the colonial powers in 2020 arranged the elections for the PPP to win. You imagine telling students that?
I mean,
Dr. Nigel Westmos said that on a program.
These guys, all they do is talk.
But
Sometimes
they
I
don't
don't think
live.
they think.
They don't live here, you know.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So they sit wherever they live in North America or wherever, and they try to divide our people. They try to stoke all sorts of confusion and chaos, but they're not coming here. They're not coming here when the problems start or when there are issues. They're not coming here. They'll sit there and they'll say all sorts of things. So, and I think Guyanese are wising up. They're not listening to them anymore. They're not. Listen, at the end of the day, as an individual, as a Guyanese living here, you don't have to go far back, like I said earlier. You just need to take 2015 to 2025. And if you're a logical person, your decision is easy. Your decision of who has the interest of the Guyanese people at heart and who is more focused on how we're sharing the spoils. Because, sometimes they tell you, oh, don't listen to your parents, they tell you about Barnum days and so on. Fine, let's leave that aside. Let us talk 2015 to 2020, when thousands of jobs in this country were lost, when public infrastructure collapsed, when social services collapsed. Could you imagine? You're calling yourself a party that has the interest of workers at heart, and you have people like Lincoln Lewis and all these other, I don't want to call them the name I want to call them, on your program, running around and trying to paint this picture about the PPP and paint this picture that the PNC and the coalition is so good. But you wipe out the labor ministry, which looks after the labor relations and the relations of workers, the interests of workers. You completely wipe that out. You made it to a little department.
That was one of the most mysterious things about them.
And
I
youths
don't
as
know why
well.
they did that. Labor, we were working. It's Labor fought against colonialism. It's Labor made. Burnham was the head of a trade union called Ghana Labor.
Labor Union, yeah.
And Jagan was the head of a trade union. So how?
So you get the point I'm making, Freddie?
This,
You take the Ministry of Housing and you collapse it into Ministry of Communities. Housing is one of the major forms of economic empowerment.
They have
for
a roof
people.
over their head. It's a natural third world
And you saw
empowerment
that
for people.
as nothing. You make it. So, and I could go on. I could spend the remainder of your hour, Freddie, to speak about the destruction that these guys, caused to this country. I'm not going to even spend much time on these chaps who go into communities and sharing out spoils and come to you and say, oh, what is your problem? Tell me your problems. And when they finish, they leave just with your problems. They haven't offered you a single solution to your problem. Right? They haven't offered you a single solution. They come, what's your problem? What is the problem? Yeah, tell me all your problems. So what? What the PPP does, what President Ali, Vice President Jagdeo, and the ministers of this country usually do, when they go to communities and people raise concerns or issues affecting them, decisions are being made there and then to transform and to change their lives for the betterment. That's the difference. You can't wake up one day and decide that I'm going to be president and I'm going to form a political party and I'm going to run a country. It don't work like that.
You don't want to say it. Hazaruddin Mohammed, you mean?
Right?
That is an absurdity.
Right? You just can't wake up and feel you can run a country.
No.
But you have no plan. You know,
you have no experience.
The Vice President made the point yesterday on his press conference that when the PPP puts together a manifesto, it's not just sitting down with a group of people and saying, let me get some things and put it on paper, what we can do for the people. Not like what the PNC did, that they posted and then they took it down and changed it, where they rent to own post, and then they put in bracket, let's include senior citizens, it's propaganda. We don't want anybody to be left out, right? What the PPP does, and the Vice President spoke to it, is that every single promise that is made in a manifesto is costed, is properly studied, and it's achievable. That's the difference. That is why the PPP could have achieved everything in its manifesto in just about 3 years into government. And for the last maybe 18 months or so, the PPP has been doing bonus. Because whatever was promised in 2020 to the people were realistic promises. Not pie in the sky. Not saying that I'm going to give you $500,000 a week of the oil money. And then when you calculate how much oil money coming in, the promise is greater than what, so your expense is greater than your revenue. But things like that you can expect from the PNC. Because you know more than any one of us, Freddie, that prior to 1992, that is what they were doing. They were living larger than their revenue. That is why we were in the mess, in the external debt that we were in.
You're too young. You have to read a book called Justice, The Struggle for Democracy by one of Guyana's and the Caribbean best journalists. In that book, we didn't have food. Guyana had crashed. And when Burnham traveled, you had to see the food list, and you had to see the liquor list. This is a country that on the brink of disaster. You guys are young, you're 5 of you in this room. You don't know what went on in those days. And Burnham's, when he's traveling, is the best champagne, the best whiskey, fancy imported fish, all of that. Father Morrison, Andrew Morrison, who wrote that book, he actually got the list from people, right? The GSC people. Mm-hmm. And that thing is passed down.
It is.
Eddy, you should see when they had the dinner in the APNU government with special plates. Special plates.
But that's the point I'm making, Freddie. And these guys are coming back to you now to tell you, oh, we can do all these things for you.
Vote for us.
You had the chance. You had the chance not so long ago. And you didn't do any of it. You didn't do any of it. You didn't do a new housing scheme.
No, the one.
You didn't build any major roads.
No, the one I like. Don't let me cut. The one I like is that they ditched a marijuana amendment bill, which was quite modern. You don't get locked up for 2 grams or 3 grams, and bail is now allowable. They ditched that, and when they came into opposition up to 2020, they actually tabled a bill like that in Parliament. Eddy,
but that's the problem.
They did that.
But they somehow believe that the Guyanese people have a very short memory. That is what they think. So for 5 years, you punish the people of this country. That is how simple I can put it.
Anyway, Craig?
And then you come back now and you think the people slept, they wake up and they forget.
Yeah, a very important feature of what you said earlier, and that I've seen with my own eyes, and I said it on our program many times when we have our rap, is that many times as an activist, you're unable to get these guys to make promises to people that, and I'm talking small promises, I'm not talking bring them the moon and the sky and so on. Simple problems that you could solve. And that was extremely difficult to attain. And I am not even a member of the PPP. And I call on PPP ministers now. Somebody will call me and say, I have this problem, come and see. You go and you verify and you call a minister and you get response immediately. And that is, for me, most impressive than all the other things that Eddy is impressed by. Yes, they're very impressive. But for me, what is most impressive for me is the way how the ministers leave all the big work they're doing, all the big roads and the big vision, and still are able to reach small people and lend a helping hand through their ministry and stuff like that. And for me, that's the most impressive thing. That I was up close and personal in the previous administration. That wasn't a feature of it.
Because there was no benefit for those in government then. That was the problem. The problem was that there was no personal benefit for them. There were no bangles and bracelets. You know?
You're throwing stones.
There were no bangles and bracelets ready. So they won't go and look after that. It doesn't bring any benefit to them.
And those bangles were expensive.
They were.
I think it's $1 million. The country.
And what is funny, these guys are coming now. These same guys are coming now to the people of this country and try to somehow give the impression that, you know, their hands are clean. Their hands are clean. And they're calling the PPP corrupt. But they can't produce the evidence of the corruption that they're talking about. So before you go, when Barajagio said, when he was in opposition that you're corrupt, he was providing the evidence. He was, because the level of corruption, I mean, if you could give away the Demerara River, if you could give away a part of the Demerara River, what else can you do? Right?
Could you refresh viewers' memory? Was that about?
You don't know about.
I know, but you
don't know about the section of the Demerara River that was given. They were giving lands. They were just distributing lands, and apparently, I don't know. It might have been deliberate, or maybe it might have been a classic example of incompetence, where they actually gave a section of the Demerara River to one of their cronies.
Well, I thought we were talking about the BK thing.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, the reality is, Freddie and Leonard, I want to go back to what is before us, because we're heading into elections. And I think the choice for Guyanese is quite clear. You have a government that has been working 24/7. And this is not no bluff of working 24/7. This is the reality. A government that's been working 24/7 to bring benefits, to bring changes to the lives of the people of this country. As against, one, a fractured political movement who can decide if they want 65% of the spoils or 35% of the spoils, and who should be the presidential candidate and who should be the prime ministerial candidate, and these guys are sharing positions already. I don't think they even consider the fact that they can't win the elections. You know, I saw Norton said that when he met with Amanza, that apart from her being a part of the campaign committee and so on, he offered her a senior position in the next government. I don't know what happened to that guy, right? So you have these guys who are busy fighting as to who will be what and what position they will get and so on, while you have a government that has been on the ground. So you cannot come and accuse the PPP government of, oh, because it's election, you are now running to communities.
Right.
We've been running to communities from day one. As a matter of fact, People's Progressive Party's civic response to the COVID-19 pandemic in opposition was tenfold of what the APNU government was doing. Because you would recall that President Ali, as candidate and as after the elections, was leading a national mask distribution exercise. With no access to state resources, you had Guyanese were volunteering their time to get masks to distribute to people. And you know, when he came into office, his first moves were to ensure that we get vaccines to people, to ensure that the shell that they bought on the East Coast, that they claimed was a COVID hospital, that had one bed and 2 empty gas bottles, to ensure that that facility was up and running. From day one, the PPP has been on the ground in the communities, working with people, improving their lives. And I keep saying I have first-hand knowledge because I'm on the ground, where the issues facing people are being addressed, and not being addressed because you're a supporter of the PPP, or your issue is not being neglected because you're a supporter of any other political party. Regardless of who or what you support, if you have an issue and you bring it to the government, the president, the vice president, or any one of the ministers, they address it. Because for us, when elections are over and the results are declared and a government is sworn in, electioneering is finished for us then. We are focused on the development and the betterment of people, all Guyanese. And you're seeing it. It is not by mistake a lot of guys are running from the other side and coming our side, because they realize they have a government that is working with them, that is working for the people of Guyana, and as a result, they want to be a part of that process. They want to be a part of that process.
You talk about the coalition just now. You alluded to the so-called coalition, but a whole set of them was spun up. Now, Miss Walton Desert from our own party, Forward Guyana, Azzaruddin Mohammed, I can't begin to describe the absurdity of that. The absurdity of that, because what I know of him and his controversy and his ignorance of politics. And then there is Simona Booms. Where are these people going?
Freddie, like I said earlier, and I'll repeat.
You see any hope for them? As a long-standing journalist, you must analyze the political landscape.
There is no hope for them. There isn't.
How much seats you get in Simona Booms?
One at home.
One?
At home.
Oh.
By her breakfast table, she could probably have a seat there. That is what I'll give her.
Azzaruddin Mohammed.
The same thing.
Same thing. Oh,
maybe a seat in his Lamborghini.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right. But
this seat in his majestic palace that he has.
I am saying, Freddie, everybody can form political parties. You have a situation here where, how old is the PNC? About 50 years, 60 years?
57 it was formed.
A party that old is struggling to retain members, is struggling to stay together. There are cracks all over. Because you have all these people who left them now forming their own party and all sorts of things.
Excuse me, the people just got 3 new members crossover from AFC.
I don't know if you can call that crossover. I don't know.
There's treachery.
Right?
More
but
or less.
You have a political party in the PNC that has been around for quite a while, struggling to stay together and to keep support. You want to tell me there's some of these guys who wake up yesterday morning and decided they're going to form political parties. Listen, Guyanese are inquisitive. They will come and listen to you. And if you bring anything, they'll take it.
You're too smart to know that is what a politician named Peter Dical in the United Force used to do. Come to you and the people go because they believe, and he used to bring radio, motorcycle, people gone to the girl. But
They will take it.
when it's voting time,
It's a different story because at the
You
end of
weren't
the
born
day,
then.
when you go into that booth to mark your X, a lot of things run through your mind. Where are you now? Where you were 5 years ago? What is the history of those who are trying to compete? What is the history of the party in government? What is the track record? And that is how decisions are made. And I can tell you, and I mean, the vice president would have said this repeatedly, the president would have said this repeatedly. The People's Progressive Party civic record speaks for itself. It speaks for itself. People who would have visited this country maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, as much as 5 years ago, or as little as 5 years ago, when they come back,
no, I meet them all the time when you see all
they're
of them.
seeing a new Guyana,
Yeah.
a modern Guyana,
I get that every night in the
a modern Guyana. Are you going to vote for a political party that is going to reverse all the gains you made? Are you going to vote for a political party of a man
Who
who's
says,
struggling to manage his own
I
business?
thought you were going to say, a man who says the majority of 65 is 22.
I deliberately didn't touch him because I think he and his party is irrelevant right now. Right now he's begging Norton for 35,
The mathematician.
right?
Yeah.
So he is in a different category by himself.
That.
But the reality is, when people go into that booth to vote, that is when their conscience kick in. We can't change the reality. There's a small group that it don't matter what the PNC does or some of these guys do, they will stay.
Right. They call
Because
it
of
a
their
critical
hate for the
mass.
PPP.
Yeah.
But the reality is, people will make decisions based on the track record, based on what is before them. And take any period of any other government outside of the PPP in Guyana and you compare it. Okay, the argument will be, oh, but you have oil money. You have oil money. That will be the argument. We can go back to one of the periods of Dr. Jagdeo's presidency. We can do that. And without oil money, without all the resources that they're going to point to now, the performance then was tenfold of what the APNU did during the 2015-2020 period. Listen, running a country is not cake shop business. They make 2 salar and 2 pint tart and 2 cheese roll and you're hoping it sells.
Some sugar cake and fun.
And if it didn't sell, you push it in the fridge and then you bring it out next
Chicken
day or you
food,
throw it
chicken
away.
food. That's what they chicken.
Right? Or chicken
I
food.
hardly eat the thing in
It's
my
not
life.
that.
For long week.
It's about
Egg bomb.
real policies, real programs
Yes, a
to
question.
benefit people.
Let me ask you something about what you do. There is often the argument that an information outlet that is funded by the state must also present the voices of the opposition. And you are running an organization called Department of Public Information. Why doesn't it feature opposition voices? Why is it a government mouthpiece, so to speak?
The Department of Public Information, and even if you go back, Freddie, you might know the GIS
Yeah, of
days,
course.
the GINA days,
I'm an old man.
GIS,
has
GIS,
always
right.
been
It's a government
agency that highlights
Government achievement.
the achievements, activities, programs, policies of the government of the day.
Yeah, it's not your running the
Why don't we
military.
ask them when they were in here for 5 years why they weren't featuring the PPP?
I'm asking you the question. you
Why don't we
answer.
ask them that? They used to send a journalist to the opposition leaders press conference, and the guy said to me, "Y'all is come for spy to see who cover y'all press conference." That's it. Why don't we ask them that question? Because you know what? This is always the problem. And we have no apologies. We don't lie. The Department of Public Information don't lie. We present facts. Anything that we publish on behalf of this government can stand scrutiny. We don't do propaganda. You know, there was a time when a certain man used to come and sit in one of these same sofas. And he had 3 persons putting powder and what do you call it, rouge and all sorts of things on his face to go and lie. Right? He once occupied the seat of Prime Minister, but
please, Eddie, for the sake of history,
right?
Call his name.
He once occupied the seat of Prime Minister, but he had 3 makeup artists used to come here and put powder on his face to cover his lies. Through the same agency, we have changed that.
Man bowling a lot of hard balls, Freddie.
But I'm not lying.
I
took over the agency.
I like those revelations because they go into history.
I took over the agency.
So Moses Nagamutu used to powder up his face.
Agency had a powder room for the Prime Minister.
Okay.
But him and
the agency had a makeup artist for the Prime Minister.
You would say
I'm not lying.
You would say he's a vain man. None of us
I didn't say that.
None of us powder when we go on the show.
I didn't say that already.
Look, there's a door there. Open the door and see if Eddie got powder in that.
No. I think my face sweating, Eddie. Can I get a powder, please?
I don't have that. I don't have that. Listen. When you lie a lot, right, Freddie? To mask your lies,
we got 8 minutes.
You have to get distractions. And I guess the powder and all these things were distractions. But this agency, the Department of Public Information, is the agency that informs the nation about the policies, programs, and initiatives.
I think I saw your face look like you had some powder.
Freddie won't give up, you know.
That was a powder.
Freddie, we have 8 minutes more. You gotta give up.
I want to ask you this. I think you haven't taken off your political hat as yet. You're going to take that off and put on the DPI hat. You'll be campaigning?
Obviously I will.
Like go on the platform and speak, or you mean behind the scenes?
That's a decision that doesn't lie with me. And that's a non-issue for me.
Okay.
Campaigning doesn't only mean go on the platform.
Yeah,
from Essequibo.
In many ways
When I go to Essequibo, I spend time with young people, I spend time with people in the communities, and I talk to them. I explain to them what is at stake in these elections. I explain to them and I highlight to them the development that is taking place in this country and where we were 5 years ago. And if that is considered campaigning, that's fine with me. But we all can't mount the platform.
Right.
And we all don't need to mount the platform. I see myself as part of a support system for our leaders. And I'm very comfortable and happy being a part of that support system for our leaders. And if I'm asked to mount the platform, I have no difficulty in doing that. Because I pulled up some information, Freddie, and I had no use for it. And we have already almost closing in on an hour.
You spoke earlier about what brought you to politics. What brought you to journalism?
It's a little funny story. So I grew up in Essequibo. Where in those days we were now transitioning to TV, and you had a little black and white TV and so on around. So I spent a lot of time listening to radio. And every Sunday afternoon from 1 o'clock, you had a nice program of all Indian music. My mom is Indian, my dad is Afro-Guyanese, or was.
So you were Douglas?
So I mixed, but I grew up in a home that used to have the mixture of both. So I used to listen to all these programs. My father used to have me and my brother listen to that announcement. That was one of his favorite things.
Franklin
Want to hear
Longhorn.
died.
That's macabre. Your children, reading that announcement
So
to your children.
I used to listen a lot to radio, right? I know Action Line, that program, for many years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always wanted
The
to.
first man used to be a guy named Abrams, and actually I would open Abrams here.
And then I used to look at a program on GTV. This gentleman died. I just had the name in my mind. Negro guy, gray hair, used to look a little bit like Desmond Hoyt.
Oh, you know,
Had
his name is in my
a wonderful program.
his
When
name
I
is-
started looking at TV, I used to look at that program.
jeez.
And
I'm gonna get
those
to
are
that.
the things that more or less pushed me to want to come into the field. I've been a professional journalist for the major part.
What news organization you worked with?
Well, I worked for NCN. I worked for CMC, that's the Caribbean Media Corporation.
New Nation.
I never worked for New Nation. I worked for, there was a online outlet, it's very popular some years ago, that is called Caribbean Net News. It's around for a while. I think it changed to Caribbean News now. Then I worked briefly for MTV. But one of the things that pushed me deeper into politics, to the forefront of politics, is the kind of treatment that many of us who were only being professionals, despite our political allegiance, were being professionals in the media.
But that wasn't recognized.
In 2015,
That wasn't
when
recognized.
I was fired for no apparent reason.
Five
From NCN.
NCN.
It was a fabricated story, and when I eventually got the opportunity to ask for the evidence, there was no evidence. There was a concocted story to put
Who was
me away.
this subject minister then?
Well, Nagamutu.
Nagamutu.
It was under
But
Nagamutu.
I think
And you had Imran Khan.
I think his problem was with
Imran Khan.
Yeah.
And the entire coalition, because I was interviewing ministers and the president and so on, somehow I was seen as a PPP. With no evidence, yes, I was a PPP, but I've always been professional. As a matter of fact, I interviewed Harmon when he went in first, because I was being a professional. But I don't want to, that's a discussion for
No, these things are
for
good for
another time.
history.
Right.
These
Right.
things are good
Feel
for
free,
history.
Feel free.
And
These things are good for history. No, please go on. Go
I
on.
took it in strides, and I'm not the only victim. There are many other victims across the public sector where they fire people because they somehow think you're PPP. Put many people on the breadline. We can talk about the sugar workers,
9,000.
right? We can talk about the CSOs,
What's the CSO?
the community support
service,
officers,
right.
the Amerindians.
Yeah.
We can talk about it right in the public sector. We can talk about how they destroy the logging industry.
Eddie, the
and lose
operator,
jobs.
you look across your shoulder and time has come. The operator signal, we got about a minute or less than a minute more. Eddie, what is it you'd like to tell our viewers about Eddy Layne, about DPI, and the thing that is close to you, politics?
I think your viewers have heard enough about the messenger. I want to leave the message with them. And that is, on the 1st of September, the choice is clear. The choice is clear. You can see the kind of progress and development taking place across this country, and you know that you have a government in the People's Progressive Party Civic that care, that is focused on your development, the development of your children, the development of your community, and to improve your life, to make the lives of Guyanese better, and to build a modern Guyana. So on the 1st of September, you know where to put your eggs, next to the cup. Don't gamble with the future, with your future in the first place, and the future of your children and children.
Adi, before we go, you must have a red hat here. You said you see what I have on the red. You got your red hat.
My red hat is in the vehicle.
Okay,
on Frederick
and could you show me before we leave the powder room?
the next time you come.
we gonna have next time.
I was about to say that Nagamutu could have helped you, but Apnu FC is not going to be powerful.
I know, any Pauli left back, stuck up somewhere. And he was very nice talking to a fellow journalist.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here.
Surely.
And I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity, and I want to remind Guyanese.
We're going to do this in another month time, Eddie. The campaign is on.
Yeah, we're going to do it after the elections when we're back in power.
Yeah,
we're going to do another
sure.
program then.
And when I will be interviewing Minister Eddy Layne.
I'm not too sure about that one, but thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. Have a splendid Friday evening, whatever is left of it. Our guest has been the head of Department of Public Information and practicing journalist over the past 20 years, Eddy Layne. As you can see, he waxed lyrical about politics and the government that he believed in. Have a very pleasant weekend on behalf of Leonard Clegg and our guest Eddy Layne. Catch you later. Bye-bye.